I'm having a rough one today, but I'm looking for a win. If I can clean and jerk something heavy, that's going to turn my day around and make it a good piece of content for you guys to enjoy. But hopefully I can yap about some useful things in between sets. Maybe I'll give out some tips on the clean and jerk, maybe just be about Olympic weightlifting in general. But yeah, we'll just start throwing weight on the bar and we'll get into it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, like I said, having a rough one today, but one thing I got to say about just this new content arc, I really enjoy making this longer form content. I don't know, I feel like the people who consume this content are the ones who give me the kind of interactions that fill my cup. Not that I appreciate every single DM I get, but it's just like sometimes the DMs are just way less filtered, and the people that consume your short form content, because it just goes a little bit more viral and it goes outside your echo chamber a bit more often. Whereas this, man, we're so firmly in the echo chamber right now. So yeah, I appreciate you guys watching all this, and like I said, hopefully you get some value out of watching this. Hopefully I can hit a nice lift today and turn around the day I'm having. Good day, anything above 120, so I might have to take some conservative jumps to find our upper limit, because yeah, I was sort of speaking in my last vlog, maybe it was more on my social media, about how, you know, my goal of clean and jerking 140 before this surf trip essentially comes down to how much chuck roast I can consume. Like, I've been showing up to training consistently, I've been putting in the work, but just my nutrition hasn't been on point. And that's always the case with me. Like, I'm always someone who has struggled with the nutrition side of things. Just like eating in a surplus. I mean, the whole thing, as soon as I get busy, as soon as life gets stressful, consistent eating is the first thing to fall off for me. Consistent eating and consistent sleep pattern. And like, it's just boring making excuses about that stuff time and time again. Like I said, I struggle with it. I'm always willing to let work get in the way of sleep and nutrition, but hopefully I can just get better at balancing those things over time. Jerk's definitely not feeling automatic. Like, even as it gets heavier, I just feel my approach change and set to set. There's no cues, there's no magical tips. Sorry, you know what the cue is? Stop being a bitch. The most worn out debate in S&C, are the Olympic lifts helpful for athletes? Or are that, see, this is the thing, like, what even is the debate? Is it about whether or not the Olympic lifts are necessary, or is it a debate about whether or not they can be helpful for athletic development? Because they're like similar but not completely overlapping conversations, in my opinion. Like, you know, if that's going to be your lens, are the Olympic lifts essential? Well, it's like, is any of it essential? Like, a squat's essential, a leg, like, I can't identify any exercise that's essential. So already we can kind of like throw that conversation out. That doesn't feel very productive to approach it from that angle. There are no compulsory exercises, especially not something that can be tedious like the Olympic lifts. Actually, that just reminded me of another point of contention. Like, because I think a lot of people have this idea in their head that, because I agree that there's a lot of skill that goes into perfecting the Olympic lifts, but then how proficient do you need to get before they have value? I mean, because there's no evidence, so we're getting into feelings here. Feelings and experiences, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to try to get through this without chopping and changing around too much. So I'll just give you my opinion straight up. The Olympic, I mean, I've already kind of given it away. Olympic lifts obviously aren't compulsory, but they have so much to offer for athletic development, especially if you've got that vanilla pudding CNS. But then again, I don't know, you should probably be exploring a lot of training modalities if you've got that vanilla pudding CNS. Okay, so after I do this set, then we'll sort of talk about the argument that Olympic lifts, I guess a lot of ballistic exercises by extension of that, are the no man's land between strength training and plyometric training or speed and power training. You walk through that whenever you want. Okay, 90 kilos moving okay. Okay, so as far as Olympic lifts being skill intensive, I don't think they're that skill intensive. I've got tutorials pinned to the top of my Instagram page teaching you snatch and clean in under a minute. One of them might even be under 45 seconds. And a lot of people got up at me because they're like, well, it takes a lifetime to master the lifts. But I'm like, yeah, you know, it's just a tutorial to get people started. And I think there's so many training tools that people pretend that you have to master them before they add any value to your athletic development. Like things like gymnastics training, I mean, even strength training in its various forms, but Olympic weightlifting gets that treatment. And like at the end of the day, we're just trying to propel an external mass. So many athletic contexts where we're just trying to propel another object. I think we should just be trying to swing shit around. It's got all the right vibes when it comes to developing athleticism. And calling it a middle ground between strength training and speed and power or plyometric training, I mean, at the end of the day, that's just an arbitrary line. Like, if you're worried about skill being a barrier to training intensity or potential adaptation, then why the hell would you ever choose a free weight squat over a leg press or a hack squat? So I don't know, if you're gonna come up with principles and heuristics, are you willing to be consistent in your application of them? Like, why are you back squatting when there's a leg press? Because there's so much more skill involved, undeniably, with free weights than the machine variation. But then again, if you are consistent like that, you're like, no, when there is the machine option, I go for that. Again, the criticism of machines in an S&C context is they just take up a lot of floor space that don't have much utility. So a lot of S&C coaches who think Olympic lifts are too skill intensive aren't doing machines because they don't have access to them. But then they're also not hitting up their boss to buy a hack squat or something like that when they do have the floor space available. I don't know, these are just all things that I think about with these somewhat arbitrary lines that we draw. I mean, we all draw arbitrary lines as part of our training model. It's just important to acknowledge them. So as far as Olympic lifts being the middle ground between actual speed and plyo training and then strength training, I disagree with that. I mean, I did power cleans, like just Olympic lifting variations, barely any pulls, like no truly heavy pulls that were above 80% of my deadlift. And I took my deadlift from 160 kilos to 240 kilos. So you can definitely build pulling strength for sure doing the Olympic lifts. Like almost as good as a deadlift. It's still heavy enough for a strength stimulus, and there's so many, like I said, it builds good movement qualities, like your athlete's ability to contract and relax, their ability to interact and control an external mass that you can progress. There's so many different variations of it you can explore. They're really, really fun. So I actually think Olympic lifts can give you a reasonable strength stimulus. Like, is it as good of a strength stimulus as like a deadlift? No, but like for athletes, I think it definitely satisfies the good enough. To give you an example, or an illustrative example, I took my deadlift from 160 to 240 just by doing power cleans and snatches. I know that's just N of one, but yeah, it's in my experience, definitely a good enough strength stimulus. Not too bad for 100. Jump up to 110 next. So something that I would ask people is how good do you need to be at the Olympic lifts before they're productive? And there's no hard evidence on this, so we're all just going off feels and experiences here. And in my feels and my experiences, I mean, I noticed I just felt so much stronger and more capable. I mean, that probably happened about 8 months into my Olympic lifting journey, and I definitely wasn't good at it at that point. I've just seen so many people get stronger, increase their vert with things like Olympic lifting in their program. And was it the whole thing driving the bus? No, but it doesn't seem to be something that like interferes with a good strength and conditioning program. And And that's definitely something I always, the anti-fragile lens is huge for me. Always looking at things through the lens of not just what works, but what are the things that will cause my problem to not work. Like I said, Olympic lifts, like where they're potentially a threat to the system is frustrating the athlete or frustrating the coach. But again, a lot of this frustration comes from this all or nothing mentality that people apply to Olympic weightlifting. Like, well, if it's not compulsory, I'm not going to bother with it. Oh, if I can't master it, I'm not going to bother with it. Again, that's the all or nothing attitude. It's arbitrary lines that we've drawn, calling it the middle ground. Like I said, I understand the blowback, right? Because there was, for so long, people acting like Olympic lifting was an essential part of athletic development. It's just not. I've seen so many freak athletes. I mean, credit to coaches like Fred Duncan, credit to coaches, especially like Daniel Back, jump science. Like, he's someone who has done a lot of Olympic lifting. So like, you'd be sympathetic if you had some emotional attachment to it. And I mean, if anything, I wouldn't frame him as anti-Olympic weightlifting, but he just calls it how it is. He's one of the people that frames as more that middle ground. Like I said, I don't think that's, I think that's a reasonably agreeable opinion. I just don't fully see it that way because to me, that's just an arbitrary line. I'd be curious, I need to get Daniel back on the podcast and ask him how he feels then about the skill differences between a leg press and then things like free weight back squats. All right, so just as I'm accumulating some rest, the official general physical preparation position statement on the Olympic lifts. The Olympic lifts are absolutely not compulsory for any athlete who's not an Olympic weightlifter. But there are no compulsory exercises, so that's a bad filter to strain your exercise selection through. Because if you are under the impression that there's essential exercises to your physical preparation, like what gave you that idea? Everything outside of your sport is relatively general, especially in the weight room. Like I said, unless you're in a strength sport. Again, are the Olympic lifts complicated? I think people overcomplicate them. I think like Olympic weightlifting coaches have that perfectionist mentality, and that's trickled out of Olympic weightlifting as a sport and just affected it as how we view the exercises altogether. Of course, when your whole sport centers around two lifts, you're gonna have that perfectionist mentality. The same way a track athlete is trying to perfect their running form. But then a track athlete doesn't need to worry about perfecting their Olympic lifting form because it's just something where we're just looking for just general adaptations over time. We're just generally looking to get more powerful. We're generally looking to improve triple extension, flexion. Actually, yeah, because everyone talks about the triple extension aspect of Olympic lifts that they train, but it's like rapid, powerful triple flexion as well. Huge timing and rhythm constraints on it. Oh, I love it. All right, anyway. I do not believe that you need perfect. I don't even think you need that good at Olympic weightlifting technique to be that efficient. It's the pursuit of efficiency that builds those powerful qualities. And like I said, I think it's still, as long as you're not completely useless and you're able to get, above 40% of your max deadlift on there, even above 30% of your max deadlift, I think it's going to make you a more powerful person. Even if your form's dog shit. Yeah, that's the thing. People get too caught up in Olympic weightlifting being a beauty pageant. You're ultimately just trying to develop horsepower. Who cares how it looks? Are they expressing horsepower when they do their Olympic lifting? Good, then it's developing athleticism. Are they enjoying it? Again, any athlete who's not into the idea or not up for the challenge, I'm not going to push it on them. But there are so many athletes that see people doing Olympic weightlifting and they get G'd up. And I want my athletes getting G'd up about their S&C sessions. Reminder, if I send this 120 into orbit, make the 5 kilo jump. I just need to hit this and then add 5 kilos. And then we're just running downhill towards our goal before I head to New Zealand. But yeah, like I said, the main thing that's going to get in the way of me clean and jerk on 140 before I go to New Zealand is just my body weight. I made so much chuck roast last night to try to combat it. We're maximizing palatability, thinking about like the condiments that we're putting on our stew. I just got to get the body weight above 80 and then we're good. Good enough. Smoke the clean, just 5 kilo jumper. I think we'll be able to make 125. It's funny, like Atlas Power Shrug keeps going on about how much stronger he is than me, but I'm not 100% sure that he can out snatch and clean and jerk me, even not factoring in body weight. But yeah, hey Atlas, you want a challenge? Well, it shouldn't be that much of a challenge because you're so much bigger and stronger than me. Apparently you know so much about training. Hit a bigger weightlifting total than me. So you want bonus points? Try to out Sinclair me. So get the body weight coefficient. I know you'll make up some excuse because you don't believe in those formulas or whatever. Well, it's a formula that other people believe in, so put yourself up to the test if you're man enough. Oh, we're cooking 130. Proud of myself for trying. All right, thanks for watching the video. Hope you got something out of watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in a couple of days.